De beskytter os. De forsvarer os. De hjælper os, når nøden er størst. Men de bliver ødelagt indefra.
Last year saw more Army suicides than any year on record.
Dag
Our son was just one of thousands of veterans that this country has lost to suicide.
efter dag
Only to die here at home in their sleep.
efter dag.
He then used a pistol to take his own life.
Der er en skjult fjende på spil,
It's got to stop.
og den skjuler sig helt åbenlyst. Den farligste fjende er den, man aldrig forventer. – 18. juni 1940. Psykiater og brigadegeneral J.R. Rees talte ved det årlige møde i Nationalrådet for Mental Hygiejne om en strategisk plan for psykiatrien.
We must aim to make it permeate every educational activity in our national life. Public life, politics, and industry. Should all of them be within our sphere of influence?
Men for at nå deres mål havde psykiaterne brug for et perfekt forsøgsområde. Et, der havde et ubegrænset budget, som kunne blive større og større.
It's all about money. Billions of dollars.
It's our tax money.
Et forsøgsområde med ubegrænsede menneskelige ressourcer.
More people than any other organization in America.
These troops are the guinea pigs.
They're being experimented on.
Et forsøgsområde, hvor alle ordrer adlydes, uden at der stilles spørgsmål.
Have to obey those orders.
You don't have an option.
I'm legally obligated.
Og et forsøgsområde, hvor eventuelle følgeskader ville blive hemmeligstemplet.
This story has been censored every step of the way.
Brigadegeneral Rees vidste, hvor han skulle lede.
The Army and the other fighting services form rather unique experimental groups, since they are complete communities. And it is possible to arrange experiments in a way that would be very difficult in civilian life.
Det var en snu taktik. Især når man foregav, at det var for at hjælpe.
And now the soldier was sick, and unless we do something for him, he may remain sick for an indefinite period of time. Gentlemen, you are not requested to treat these patients. You are directed to do so.
Psykiaterne er nået langt. Bare for 20 år siden havde man aldrig hørt om dem inden for militærlivet.
It wasn't until World War I that they came out of the asylums and sort of worked their way into the military. And it was a very slow, very gradual insertion.
Langsomt og gradvist, fordi man simpelthen ikke stolede på psykiaterne. Og det er god grund. Deres behandlinger har aldrig været kendt for at være videnskabelige. Faktisk blev mange af deres eksperimentale procedurer senere stemplet som tortur.
One of the first uses of psychiatric treatment actually goes back to World War I when it was used on German soldiers who were deserting and trying to leave the front because of the horrors of the trench warfare on the Western Front.
Denne behandling blev kaldt Kaufmann-kuren efter dens opfinder, men kun få ville kalde den terapeutisk. Den traumatiserede soldat blev forbundet til en elektrisk strøm, som blev trappet op, indtil han ikke længere kunne klare det. Mens dette skete, blev han givet hypnotiske suggestioner.
Diese Kaufmann-Therapie wurde von den Psychiatern als Heiltherapie angewandt und eingeführt. Für die Soldaten war das alles andere als Heilung, weil es ja ein Schmerz war, der ihnen zugefügt wurde an den Gliedmaßen. Und so war wohl der wahre Grund, warum die Soldaten dann wieder an die Front gingen, nämlich, dass sie diese Schmerzen nicht mehr aushalten konnten und lieber sich in Kampfeinsatz wagten, als in der Klinik dauernd Schmerzen zu ertragen.
Men den smerte, som disse soldater oplevede, hindrede ikke psykiaterne i at fortsætte deres eksperimenter under 2. verdenskrig. Som tidligere var det ikke designet til at hjælpe patienterne med at komme sig over krigens traumer.
Zum einen war man von Seiten der Wehrmedizin im Zweiten Weltkrieg bestrebt, den Patienten noch schneller, als dies im Ersten Weltkrieg gelungen war, wieder an die Front zurückzuschicken. Das war der erste und sozusagen das entscheidende Ziel, das die Kriegspsychiatrie im Zweiten Weltkrig hatte.
Over hele verden brugte psykiaterne krigen som en mulighed for at afprøve nogle meget risikable behandlinger på soldater, som ikke havde noget at skulle have sagt. Nogle af dem fik elektrochok, andre blev lagt i dyb koma, og endnu flere fik stærke psykoaktive stoffer. Efterhånden som de trængte dybere ind, blandede de sig i militærets rekruttering, træning, disciplin, moral. De rådgav endda angående udvælgelse af officerer.
Then Poole is an odd sort of man. In civilian life he was very badly adjusted. In the personal sense, that is, he just couldn't mix, couldn't make friends.
I 1943 havde psykiatri trængt så dybt ind i det amerikanske militær, at flådens toppsykiater pralede med:
Psychiatry now has a place in every step of the Navy man's career, from his induction to his eventual separation from the service.
It is because of the military that psychiatrists, they became important. You know, they're wearing a uniform now, and they've got the epaulets, and, you know, they've got some power because of the military. The military gave them that.
USA's militære chefpsykiater, brigadegeneral William Menninger, skrev endda en håndbog med en liste over alle de psykiske problemer, han mente soldater kunne have. Men der var ingen blodprøve, ingen røntgenbilleder, intet, der blev set i et mikroskop. Kun meninger. Videnskabeligt bevis? Nej. Men det var blot til fordel for psykiatrien. Når det kommer til stykket, gav Menningers militærhåndbog et indtryk af legalitet, noget man kunne bruge til at diagnostisere og behandle endnu flere soldater. Militærhåndbogen var så udbredt, at den senere blev fundamentet for psykiatriens bibel, Diagnostisk og Statistisk Manual over Psykiske Forstyrrelser, DSM. På grund af indflydelse fra folk som Menninger, godtog militærorganisationerne under 2. verdenskrig psykiaternes påstand om, at de var eksperter inden for psykisk sundhed. Og på grund af det kunne psykiaterne frit afprøve stoffer på mange flere soldater.
The drugs of choice are the barbiturates. You will note that in combat exhaustion, massive doses of these drugs are needed in therapy.
During the Second World War, both Americans and Germans experimented with stimulants because everybody thought, well, this is great, and, you know, it helps you focus, it keeps you awake.
Et af disse stoffer var Pervitin, som blev givet til tyske soldater for at formindske hæmninger og forøge aggressivitet.
Man kann sagen, dass dieser Feldzug durchaus Pervitin getränkt war, was die Wehrmachtssoldaten betrifft. Die Wehrmachtssoldaten waren für ihre Gegner unfassbar fit, sie waren unfassbar wach, sie hielten sehr, sehr lange durch, sie waren furchtlos, sie waren aggressiv und wirkten vor allem auf die Gegner wie aufgezogen.
Et il a fallu à peu près 18 mois pour que les accidents apparaissent en nombre considérable, c'est-à-dire des jeunes soldats qui brutalement se conduisaient comme des bêtes féroces, tiraient sur tout ce qui bougeait, sur les civils et sur leurs propres compatriotes. Et les accidents, les imprudences au pilotage d'avions, au pilotage de chars ont été telles que l'armée allemande a interdit l'utilisation de ces drogues à partir du milieu de l'année 42 ou 43. Et l'armée anglaise a vécu la même expérience.
Stimulanser blev også brugt af japanerne. De gav deres piloter øjeblikkelig mod, men det kostede. Soldaten, der ses her, var torpedopilot under 2. verdenskrig.
海軍の中の特攻隊員ということで、人間魚雷で有名な回転というものの搭乗員として訓練を受け、
Missionen var, at man blev sat ind i en bemandet torpedo, som ville udløses manuelt, når man kom nær ved et fjendtligt skib.
海軍の中ではね、とにかく先行艇部隊、先行艇による特攻を、とにかく成功させるためにということで、海軍ぐるみでというかね、でもってとにかく搭乗員たちにアンフェタミンを投与させて作戦行動を成功させるということがもう行われたということですね。
Selvom han overlevede krigen, blev hans liv ødelagt.
で実際に私の叔父も、帰ってきて、復員してきてからそういった形で今度メタンフェタミンヒロポン中毒になって、で今度ヒロポンが禁止されたわけですよね。今度は何になってか、もうアルコール、もう本当にアルコールはひどかったです。私も叔父がおばにね本当に暴力を振るうシーンっていうのは何度も見てますし、だから彼自身も実際に、自殺を3度図って。
Fra 50'erne og op gennem 70'erne fortsatte psykiatere i lande som England, USA og Rusland at bruge deres militær som forsøgsområde for et helt arsenal af nye eksperimenterende behandlinger. Amerikanske militærpsykiatere eksperimenterede med LSD på soldater.
The squad, composed of volunteers for the test, responded like well-trained soldiers, immediately and without question. The squad all except the drill sergeant now drugged with LSD. After a few minutes, the men found it difficult to obey orders.
Selvom de kendte til farerne ved stoffet, fortsatte engelske psykiatere med LSD-testerne, denne gang på kommandosoldater.
Unknown to the troops, the drug was added to the water on the second day. At 11:40, the first effects of the drug make their appearance. The men no longer take cover, they relax and begin to giggle. 70 minutes after the administration of the drug, with one man climbing a tree, the troop commander gives up, saying, "I cannot do anything about this. I cannot control the men and I can take no action myself. I am wiped out as an attacking force."
Hvad sovjetiske psykiatere gav deres soldater, må guderne vide.
В советской армии я служил поваром, и обычно перед обедом приходил доктор, врач, и давал нам пакетик, чтобы мы сыпанули в борщ или там в кашу и размешали. Но мы обычно говорили, что это такое. Это нормально, это витамины. Но что это такое, я не знаю. Тем более, что мы, повара, обычно свою долю вынимали из котла до того, как приходил доктор.
Som tiden gik, fortsatte soldaterne med at få psykofarmaka, der aldrig var blevet undersøgt eller godkendt. Det har været et stort eksperiment.
In the Falklands campaign, air crew were given uppers and downers so that their flight duty rotas could be maximized.
We've gotten reports that the Gulf War II pilots do take amphetamines. They do take dexedrine. And that at the nighttime they're given Ambien to bring them down so they can sleep. So they're continuously on this up and down kind of scenario.
Certainly in the Iraq-Afghanistan wars, psychiatry has played a huge role. Huge.
Psykiatri er nu en accepteret del af militærorganisationer rundt om i verden. Vi får at vide, at vi skal stole på psykiaterne, at de er autoriteterne. Men der er et problem. Tingene er ikke blevet bedre. De er kun blevet værre.
I spent almost 26 years on active duty in the Marine Corps. I retired with the grade of Brigadier General.
I was an Army captain in the aviation branch.
I was a Staff Sergeant E5 in the United States Air Force.
I was in the United States Marine Corps from 2007 to 2011.
Florida Army National Guard.
31st Engineering Battalion.
I was in aviation and military intelligence.
Battlefield intelligence analyst.
I was a U.S. Navy fighter pilot.
Combat medic with an LPN license.
So my nomenclature would be a 68 whiskey Mike 6.
I got out as a sergeant, non-commissioned officer, this past March. I didn't see the emergence of psychiatry in the Army up until I suffered my own injury. And then it was a flood. It was a flood of doctors, and it was a flood of meds.
Der er lige så meget pres på soldater i dag som tidligere. Lange dage, anstrengende missioner og adskilt fra ens familie i lange perioder. Og når nogen bliver ramt af mentale og emotionelle problemer, er der ingen, der betvivler deres realitet. Men uanset hvor soldaterne går hen for at få hjælp i dagens militær, ender de ofte op i psykiaternes hænder.
You can go to a chaplain, and a chaplain is just somebody that you can talk to. But I think part of the issue is that a chaplain is kind of obligated to route you straight to a psychiatrist if you mention any key words, you know? Like, yeah, I have been stressed out or something like that.
If you tell a therapist you're depressed, they're going to send you to a psychiatrist. It's going to happen. It's just how it works.
So they'll make a real quick decision on you have a problem or what the problem might be within just minutes. So 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, if you're lucky, 45 minutes in the office.
Normal praksis for en psykiater er først at diagnostisere dig med en psykisk forstyrrelse. Han vil måske sige, at du har en kemisk ubalance i hjernen, selvom han ikke har udført nogen tester, der viser det. Og ingen tester vil gøres, for der findes ikke nogen. Rent faktisk findes der ingen tester for nogle af de 100 af psykiske sygdomme, der findes i psykiatriens diagnostiske manual.
Psychiatry, especially, has no objective means of making any diagnosis. In general medicine, at least you have x-rays and blood tests to go on, and so that's the big dilemma faced by psychiatry. They have zero ability to diagnose, so they have zero ability to treat.
No physical abnormality has ever been found. So there is no physical abnormality to demonstrate by an MRI, a CT, an EEG. It's another fraud, pure and simple. It's another fraud.
Så psykiatere stiller dig en diagnose med hjernesygdomme. Fysiske ting galt med din hjerne, som de ikke kan bevise eksisterer.
There were no medical tests of any kind. There were no blood tests. Nothing that I could tell that was scientific in any way or medical in any way.
Somebody suggests that you have a disorder, a disease or something, there should be some sort of objective test. It's not unreasonable to ask for it. It's not unreasonable to insist on it.
Men man vil ikke få ind for psykiatere, kun deres meninger. Og de holder sig ikke tilbage med dem.
There are troops that are seeing psychiatrists who are automatically, before they even open up their mouth, being diagnosed just because of the way how they look.
The psychiatrist told me that I would never amount to anything in the military again because of the emotional trauma I experienced and my current, at the time, my depression levels, my stress, my anxiety. I was never going to accomplish anything in the military. I would never be a good soldier again. And the only viable option that the military saw was to discharge me.
When a psychiatrist says your life is not worth anything because it's been all some sort of psychosis or some sort of trauma event, or you've got this disease or that, or some brain chemical or whatever, a soldier's life turns into nothing.
Hvert år er der tusinder af mænd og kvinder inden for militæret, som bliver stillet en diagnose med en psykisk forstyrrelse. Nogle gange endda 2 eller 3. Dette er gået så meget ud af kontrol i USA, at Pentagon nu bruger $2 milliarder alene på psykisk sundhed. Og Veterans Administrations budget for psykisk sundhed har eksploderet. Det er skudt op fra $3 milliarder i 2007 til næsten 7 milliarder i 2014. Det er mange penge at bruge på en profession, som ikke engang kan finde bevis for dets hjernesygdomme under et mikroskop. Ikke at det betyder noget for psykiaterne. Diagnosen er kun det første trin. Faktisk en undskyldning for at få dig i gang med nogle meget farlige behandlinger.
joined the Navy when I was 17, and I retired. I was medically discharged, I should say, from the SEAL teams. I served my country with America's best in a time of war, and I had the honor of leading them. But I did lose, my swim buddy, which is the guy you go through SEAL training with. And that gave me a survivor's guilt that I can't begin to describe. And, I make it through combat in multiple firefights and nothing. I got blown up by an IED. It broke my neck, and I didn't know it at the time. But I lived with that for like 5 years, make it through all of that. And I come back and they almost kill me with pills.
Det næsten uundgåelige resultat af en psykiatrisk diagnose er en recept på psykofarmaka. Psykiatere gør ikke meget mere end det, og de har ordineret i massevis. Fra 2005 til 2011 har Forsvarsministeriet forøget dets udskrivning af recepter for psykofarmaka til næsten 7 gange mere end før. Den udvikling er 30 gange hurtigere end i civilbefolkningen. Dette drug push er det samme for krigsveteraner.
We get this guy from the Veterans Administration or something like that. And he's basically telling you, if you are depressed, if you do something erratic, it's a disease. This guy is literally the loudest guy in the entire briefing. Very just in your face about it. And he's just basically saying, if you're doing anything other than what you normally do, you have a disease and you need to be put on the system. You need drugs.
We can control it with medication. And then right after that, they're going to get prescribed whatever drug the psychiatrist seems fit rather than just being able to talk to somebody.
No therapy, no lifestyle change. It's a straight line of how they educate these doctors in pharmacology, a symptom to a drug.
Psykiatere har ingen idé om, hvad deres stoffer gør ved menneskekroppen. Men når det drejer sig om at dele dem ud, har det næppe nogen betydning.
My older brother got out of the Marine Corps, like I said, about a year ago. And when he went to the VA hospital to make his disability claim and talk to him, he told him that he had trouble sleeping. And he didn't tell me what they gave him, but he basically said they gave him a big bag of happy pills.
So I came home on R&R from Iraq and got severely depressed. And they went and told me to go see Don-based psychologist, which then they prescribed me meds.
He basically told me what was wrong with me and prescribed me with Zoloft, and that was pretty much it.
I've been on Ambien, Seroquel, Paxil. That was one of the big ones. A very dangerous drug that I just think is very harmful, called Abilify. It kind of puts whatever meds you're on steroids.
Wellbutrin, Zoloft, modafinil, methylphenidate, trazodone, Prazosin, and Ambien.
Starts out with Dexedrine,
Vibrid,
Dalmane,
Citalopram,
Thorazine,
Citalopram,
Prozac,
and effects are at the same time.
Stelazine,
Zoloft,
Compazine,
Seroquel,
Cogentin,
Abilify,
Nodular,
Wellbutrin,
IV-Amytal,
Depakote,
Artane,
Xanax,
Halperidol or Haldol,
Klonopin,
Temazepam,
Adderall, and Librium.
5 milligrams to 300.
300 milligrams.
1,200 milligrams of lithium a day.
Most individuals who would be given these drugs have no clue what the drug is, really, or what it can do to the mind, really. They just don't know. So it's a blind date, and and sometimes it turns out to be kind of an ugly one.
Medicineringen af militæret har nået uanede højder, især i USA. Den amerikanske regering har i de sidste 10 år brugt mere end $4,5 milliarder på at medicinere soldater og krigsveteraner. Faktisk har Pentagon i 2011 brugt mere på piller, indsprøjtninger og vacciner end på Black Hawk-helikoptere, Abrams kampvogne, Hercules C-130 fragtfly og Patriot-missiler sammenlagt.
The use of both psychiatry and psychotropic drugs has just ballooned in the U.S. military.
Every soldier that I've talked to, every time they've seen a psychiatrist, they would prescribe them some kind of psychotropic drug right off the bat.
I would say 60 to 70% of the soldiers we saw in our center were on medication.
Let me give you an example. I was on a committee, a scholarship committee for veterans at a college, and they invited the VA psychiatrist to come in to give a talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. But at the very end, I raised my hand, they said, how many of your veterans that you see do you medicate? And initially he tried to skirt the answer. He said, I see the most difficult. And I said, we all see the most difficult. How many do you medicate? 98%. It's criminal.
Og det er ikke meget bedre i resten af verden.
I deal a lot with a lot of our soldiers within our NATO brothers and sisters. Canada, New Zealand, Australia, UK, Germany, France, Belgium, and even soldiers down in Italy and even in Spain. Each and every one of them have complained about the issues dealing with psychotropic drugs with them.
I was stationed in Germany for a while. I was in Kosovo for a while. And they had talked about that, when they see the psychiatrist, they do give them psychotropic drugs. So it seems like it's a worldwide problem.
A lot of our veterans who've told us that when they went for help whilst they were still serving, they were then prescribed medication. It didn't help.
Quand on envoie un patient chez un psychiatre, il ressort directement avec des molécules chimiques. Et ça, on commence à avoir les effets secondaires et on commence à avoir les problèmes.
І справді, психіатри давали військовослужбовцям небезпечні наркотики, при цьому знаючи, що військовослужбовці мають в руках небезпечну зброю.
Och någonstans så finns det ju någon drivande orsak till att vi skriver ut mer och mer piller. Men vi får ju inte det förväntade resultatet.
Men uanset landet er dette militæret. Og i militæret har soldaterne intet andet valg end at parere ordre.
When I'm wearing this uniform, if I'm ordered to see a psychiatrist, I have to go to see a psychiatrist. If I'm not in this uniform, I can tell them no.
The suggestion to go see the psychiatrist came across as a heavy recommendation. It wasn't a direct order, but it was, this is something you should go do. It's something that needs to be handled. You should go do this.
Og så er der det pres, der bliver lagt på en til at tage medicinen.
I actually asked my commander that. I said, do I have to take these drugs if is this an order? And they all just stared at me, wouldn't give me a no or a yes, implied that I'm supposed to take this.
I would have refused. I probably would have lost my rank or lost opportunities in the military because I wasn't taking care of the property of the military, which was my body.
Most of the troops that I talked with did not want to take the psychiatric drugs, did not want them, did not need them, and rebelled at having to take them. But they were told that if you don't take these drugs, you can't get your compensation and you can't get any more VA treatment if you deny the drug usage. So they did.
I have heard that military personnel have been ordered to take these drugs. My response to that is, that's an illegal order, and I had that verified by a Judge Advocate General right here in Washington, D.C. It's illegal to demand that. If a psychologist tells you that you have to take it or you're going to lose your benefits, you need to report that psychologist to the proper authorities.
Officielt er 1 ud af 6 amerikanske soldater på mindst et psykofarmakon. Men sandheden er, at ifølge USA's senats komité for de væbnede styrker, er der ingen, der ved, hvor meget medicin, der udleveres til soldater i krigszonerne. Intet papir, ingen recept. De bliver bare givet ud. Sandheden er, at mængden af psykiatrisk medicinering sikkert er meget, meget større. Især når så mange kvalificerer til psykiatriens største diagnose-medicinkombination i historien.
I was in the Army, and when I got out, I was corporal. And then I went back as a contractor for the Department of the Army. My original purpose was definitely get involved, serve my country, and then pursue it from that point forward. I personally had been deployed to Iraq for just about a year, and having gone back to Europe, I was having trouble sleeping, and having some issues just adjusting back to this, different lifestyle after having been shot at, nearly blown to pieces, so many times to this. Now I can just go down the road and get a pizza. And one of my officers recommended I go see a psychiatrist. Within 10 minutes it was, so you're probably bipolar, most likely ADD, and PTSD.
De synlige påvirkninger af kampstress er blevet beskrevet af oldtidens forfattere som Homer og Herodot. Franskmændene kalder det mal de pays. Tyskerne kalder det Heimweh. I Spanien hedder det estar roto. Uanset hvad, så har militære styrker i århundreder sagt, at krigens rædsler nogle gange er mere end soldater kan klare. Tidligere blev det betragtet som en nervøs reaktion, et forventet resultat af kamphandlinger. Men psykiater i dag stempler det som en hjerneforstyrrelse, som begyndte i 1980 som posttraumatisk stress, PTSD.
This war isn't any different than any other than guys coming back with shell shock, battle fatigue or combat fatigue, and now they're calling it post-traumatic stress disorder. It's been around forever.
Og som med andre forstyrrelser blev det ikke fundet ved hjælp af videnskabelige tester, men blev lobbyet for af psykiatere og stemt ind i psykiatriens diagnostiske og statistiske manual. Rent faktisk stemt ind. Det er i dag militærpsykiatriens mest populære diagnose, og den har hurtigt spredt sig til den civile verden.
The goal is to combat post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD.
Helping veterans with PTSD.
Soldiers' post-traumatic stress disorder.
I was diagnosed with PTSD.
PTSD.
How many times do you hear PTSD in the media now? People really don't understand it, I don't think, and we're just trying to assign a label to people, our soldiers and sailors that are coming back from these very horrific events that they're being witness to.
People who suffer from post-traumatic stress are reacting to a traumatic event in a normal fashion. What we believe is that the military is treating veterans in particular with post-traumatic stress as though they have a mental illness. We don't believe they have a mental illness. We believe that they're wounded and what they need is healing.
In PTSD, psychiatry has created a disease. They speak of it as a disease just as they speak of generalized anxiety disorder and clinical depression as diseases, but none of them are actual diseases.
If someone shows up in my practice and they say a psychiatrist or other doctors diagnosed me with post-traumatic stress disorder, I would actually ask the patient, well, okay, what tests were done to establish that diagnosis? And they'll think about it and they'll realize that nothing was done. They just got the opinion of whoever the practitioner was.
Certainly there is stress that goes along with combat. When you put a soldier into an environment where he's not getting sleep, he's being shot at, friends around him are getting hurt or dying, that's going to cause some bad side effects. Sure, those phenomena exist, but that doesn't then equate to, well, let's drug him.
Der er ikke noget fup ved kampstressens rædsler. Men at psykiatrien skulle opfinde en medicinsk klingende hjerneforstyrrelse for at få dig til at acceptere deres påståede behandling, og så fortsætter de med at gøre definitionen bredere og bredere.
What qualifies for PTSD has recently been downgraded, but they have directives that come out that say, well, now we're going to suggest that everybody who's, been in a war zone could possibly, maybe. And so with that, anybody qualifies.
What I saw with the new privates coming in is they were just out of basic training and they were given psych drugs for PTSD, for being in basic training for 9 weeks.
I was diagnosed with PTSD because I came back and I was a little jittery, and it's just, I guess they said that I had PTSD from that, when it was just I was still kind of trying to assimilate back into the scene of not being in combat, of not being over.
The determination that I had PTSD was almost made before I even walked into the office.
They told me that it was clear that I had post-traumatic stress disorder and that I needed medication to fix it.
Nearly every soldier in my company was diagnosed with PTSD. Nearly every soldier.
Der er 175 forskellige symptomkombinationer, som en psykiater kan bruge til at diagnostisere dig med PTSD. Så det er ikke overraskende, at 37% af krigsveteraner nu bliver behandlet for det. Når man først er blevet stemplet, vil 80% få psykofarmaka. Og af de veteraner, der medicineres, får 89% antidepressiva og 34% får stærke antipsykotiske midler. Selv efter en af verdens førende PTSD-psykiatere foretog en undersøgelse, der påviste, at antipsykotiske midler ikke virker.
Just because a medication can be widely prescribed doesn't mean necessarily that it's really helpful overall for the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder.
Hvis psykiaterne vil gøre sig den ulejlighed at foretage medicinske tester, ville de måske kunne finde noget, der var fysisk galt. Noget, de ville stemple som PTSD, men faktisk er fysisk skade, der kan bekræftes med hjernescanning. Det kaldes traumatisk hjerneskade eller TBI, og det er anslået, at 320.000 soldater har været udsat for det.
Traumatic brain injury is an injury to the brain itself, either caused by a concussive blast or a closed head wound. There's some difficulty determining between traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress because the symptoms tend to mirror each other. Inability to focus, short-term memory loss, difficulty with rage or anger.
You're talking about a physical injury, an actual brain injury, as opposed to a mental health, a condition. You know, it's the two absolutely, totally separate things.
I'm handling a Gulf vet who's got traumatic brain injuries. He's labelled with PTSD. And he's got a lump of shrapnel in his head, you know? So, hang on, you don't get lumps of shrapnel flying into your head and embedding in your skull do not leave you with no effect on the brain. The brain's going to take a real hammering from that sort of thing.
Men de fleste psykiatere vil ikke opdage TBI, for de tjekker det slet ikke. I stedet for, mens det virkelige problem forværres, dækker de det hele med medicinering, som kan gøre det hele meget værre.
I think my main goal why I joined the military was the first thing is to get money for college. And then all my friends were going in and they were having a blast with it, and I just really wanted to do something with my life and not just stay here in a small town and not do anything. I served in 2 branches of the military. I served in the Marine Corps and also the Army, and got out as a specialist also at E4. When I was in the Marine Corps, I never went and saw a psychologist, but when I was in the Army, they told me I had to go see one. At that point, he diagnosed me with PTSD and prescribed me Prozac and Wellbutrin in Iraq, still carrying a weapon, still in the combat zone. The psychologist said that my anxiety and depression, everything, like stuff like that, should actually go away. And actually it did not. It got worse.
En soldats liv er krævende. Man bliver trænet til at være opmærksom og i topform fysisk og psykisk. Det er en nødvendighed. Men psykofarmaka kan gøre en ukampdygtig. Psykiaterne ved det, Men de påstår stadig, at det er terapeutisk. Her er kendsgerningerne.
All psychiatric meds are mind-altering drugs. People don't put that together. But they're mind-altering, and they have side effects, disaster side effects.
One of the most significant problems about every psychotropic drug that I can think of, the stimulants, the tranquilizers, antipsychotics, mood modulators, are unpredictable. I can give the same drug to 20 different men, and they'll have 10 different reactions to it.
Ingen, selv ikke ham, der ordinerer det, ved, hvad psykofarmaka vil resultere i. De er alle forskellige og har en lang liste af bivirkninger skrevet med småt på tillægget i æsken.
My friends that take the drugs that I'm prescribed have very bad balance, a terrible memory. They have difficult talking clearly, speaking clearly to each other.
Their reaction times are very slow, and they have a hard time concentrating.
It pretty much just erased all feelings that I had. So I was just there.
A lack of motivation, really. I just stopped caring.
I was constantly demotivated, very worn down all the time. I was constantly sleepy, like not tired, just sleepy. I could stop doing something and instantly fall asleep.
1 minute you can be on patrol, next minute you'd be asleep. That's what those pills do to you. They make you tired.
I would get headaches, but it's not like a normal headache. It would be like sharp pains just zapping through my head.
My anxiety level was through the roof. I had heart problems. I put on 20 to 25 kilos of extra weight.
I probably gained 40 pounds over the course of that period of time.
I was up to almost 300 pounds. I was in metabolic syndrome. My adrenal system had completely shut down. My muscles had seemingly turned to water, and I could not lose weight for anything.
I can't ever think of anybody who's ever said, I feel better. This has helped me. I can't honestly think of anybody who's ever said that to me. And I've seen and talked to a lot of veterans in my time.
These are supposed to be the finest, most elite soldiers, physical combat machines, and they're being given something that's harming them, that's destroying not only their body physically, but also their minds mentally.
Psykiatere vil fortælle dig, at det gode ved deres psykofarmaka overstiger farene. Det er noget vrøvl og en videnskabelig løgn. Der har været store undersøgelser, der påviste, at psykiatrisk medicin som antidepressiva ikke virker bedre end en sukkerpille. Men nogle af disse bivirkninger er ikke bare skadelige. De er dødelige. Udover de forfærdelige bivirkninger, man kan få fra psykofarmaka, er der det mest underlige. De kurerer intet. Så hvad gør de så? De ændrer din adfærd ved at dæmpe dine følelser. Det forhindrer en person i at få orden på tankerne og gør dem derudover følelsesløse. Der findes endda et navn for det. Det er personalisering.
I've had patients who've been given very large doses of psychoactive drugs over a period of about a year and basically destroyed their sense of self.
They don't care almost about anything. You could go up to someone and start yelling at them, and if they're on the large enough cocktail, they won't do anything. They become almost drones.
So they're literally lobotomizing our soldiers with these drugs. I'm sorry. I'm just being very direct and honest with my experience of over 200 injured warriors. It's almost like being in a mental hospital with lobotomized patients. I'm sorry. It's just awful.
Og depersonalisering bliver farlig, når medicin skaber en anden almindelig bivirkning.
If someone is numbed like that, they're less likely to be concerned about the consequences of their behavior and might resort then to impulsive actions, violent actions.
Some of the effects of the drugs that we're aware of, that the veterans we've dealt with have come across, have been things like more anxiety, more anger.
They're having all these fits of anger, aggression, they're getting in fights with their significant other.
And of course what this has led to is just a really horrendous number of domestic shootings, domestic beatings, child, wife abuse.
Statistikkerne bakker det op. Siden 2006 er voldelige sexforbrydelser og overgreb i militære hjem gået op med mere end 30%, og overgreb mod børn med 43%, samtidig med at psykiatrisk medicinering er skudt i vejret. Og så er der de tilfælde, hvor en soldat på psykofarmaka går helt fra den.
This one particular morning, the soldier was in our unit, and most of the soldiers in our unit are on some type of medication. And she was waiting for the soldier. And when she walked in, he was locking and loading his weapon. And she asked him, "What are you doing?" And he looked at her, he said, "I don't know." And she said, "You were locking and loading," which means he's putting his ammo in his weapon. And she asked him, and she said, "What were you going to do?" He said, "I don't know if I was just going to shoot myself or shoot up everybody in this building and then myself." And we were there.
11. maj 2009. Sergeant John Russell åbner ild i en klinik for kampstress i Bagdad. Han dræber 2 officerer og 3 menige. Dagen før havde hans psykiater ordineret ham antidepressiva. 11. marts 2012. I en afsides landsby i Afghanistan myrder sergeant Robert Bales 16. 9 af dem var børn. Før hans myrderier havde Bale sniffet psykiatrisk medicin, Valium og drukket alkohol. 16. september 2013. Veteran Aaron Alexis tager et gevær med til flådestationen i Washington D.C., hvor han dræber 12 mennesker med koldt blod. Ifølge rapporter var Alexis blevet ordineret det antidepressive middel Trazodone.
He talked about it. He said he went to the VA and they would give him some medicine.
Disse og flere var i kløerne på eksperter i psykisk sundhed, lige før de begik forfærdelige, voldelige handlinger. Der er menig David Lawrence, som myrdede en Taliban-leder i hans fængselscelle, mens han var på Zoloft og Trazodone. Terrence Tyler, en tidligere marinesoldat, som skød 2 kolleger og dernæst sig selv i et supermarked i New Jersey. Han var blevet diagnosticeret med alvorlig depression og tog Prozac. Og Eddie Ray Rauth, som myrdede en dekoreret Navy SEAL. Han var lige kommet ud af et psykiatrisk hospital, hvor han var blevet behandlet for PTSD.
Drugs and weapons do not mix. Okay, it's a recipe for disaster all by itself.
They're seeing things different. Their mind has been altered. The brain has been altered. Their judgment and reasoning is not what it would have been without these medications.
It's the mind that makes the decision of when to shoot and what to shoot. It's the mind. If you alter the mind and you imbalance the mind, which is what psychiatric drugs do, you change the results of who or what gets shot on the battlefield or at home after the battle is over.
Psykofarmaka forårsager ikke kun vold blandt soldater. Det tilskynder også folk fra alle samfundslag til at begå massemord i hjemmet, på arbejdspladsen og i skolerne. Og så er der det, som de måske vil gøre mod sig selv.
Ever since I was a little kid, I always loved the military. I loved the Army, and I think I always knew that I wanted to, join. I just said, I wanted to go and experience it, and just to serve my country. And then I went to the recruiter station. I said I want to jump out of airplanes and ride motorcycles. And right then they said, "We got a job for you," But I did it, and it was good. It was right after combat. So, I started getting these dreams and flashbacks and all that stuff, and then, kind of like big anxiety and all that stuff. And I went to my doc, and they said, "Yeah, we got to get you some meds," and they gave me them, and that was it. You first start taking it, you feel great. Whoa, and then it just it's like you get immune to it, and then let's take a higher dose. Let's take a higher dose.
In my experience, I didn't see anything helping at all. I felt like it was making everything worse.
I gained 40 pounds taking the meds. We looked it up, and that one med, I don't remember what it was called, but it said it acted like you had 1,500 calories every pill you took, and I had to take it 3 times a day.
If he missed a dose, then the whole family would know. The whole house would be kind of on edge because you couldn't talk to him. He would snap.
You take your meds, and you can just start feeling it going down, and then you're just like, bam, and you're a zombie,
It almost seemed like he just didn't care about life anymore. He wasn't himself.
My body was breaking down, and my wife, she's all into herbs, and she's saying this isn't right. And then one I was all fucking drunk, and the meds just taking that shit, and I just said, fuck it, I'm done. And I took my pistol and fucking put it in my mouth, and she opened up the door. I fucking took it, and I was like, fuck it. I said, we gotta fucking do something, and this shit just didn't work, and
I had to literally grab the weapon away from him because it probably would have happened.
So I said, fuck it, I'm stopping. I'm stopping taking all this shit. It's killing me. It's gonna kill me. It's gonna kill my wife.
That was the straw that broke the camel's back. It wasn't working, and something had to be done. I didn't want to lose my husband. I didn't want him to kill himself, and I didn't want to be killed as well in the process.
I knew I wasn't me. It was the drug that was doing it, and I knew I had to change, or I'd be dead, and that's why I changed it.
Der er et kæmpe problem med selvmord i militæret. Siden 2002 er hyppigheden af selvmord i USA næsten fordoblet.
The suicide rate has really been going out the roof here lately with our military members, both while they're still in and once they return back to the States.
I would move from base to base to base, and I'd be on different missions at different times. And one minute I'm on a base and I'm having lunch, and I'm being asked, hey, did you hear about those 3 guys, those 3 soldiers who committed suicide?
It was a black eye on Fort Bliss. Soldiers were dying left and right. Preventable deaths, we're talking suicides, we're talking about these soldiers getting in their cars or motorcycles going 150 miles an hour and, hitting a median, family violence. It really spiraled out of control.
Mens alt dette sker, fortsætter psykiatere med at dele medicin ud i store mængder. Medicin, der er kendt for at forøge voldsom og selvmorderisk tankegang.
My psychiatrist at the time had issued me a recommended gabapentin, and I took one, and I think within 30 minutes I had thoughts of suicide.
They started me on a really low dose to build it in my system, but even the low dose, I was still feeling side effects of suicide, depression, anxiety.
I did notice that there was a lot of times that I thought, that it would just be better to be dead than to keep living like that. And I look back on it now, and I do realize that it was the meds.
Ja, der kan være grunde til selvmord i hæren i dag, der ikke har noget med psykofarmaka at gøre. Men det ville være dumt at ignorere medicinens indflydelse. Bare spørg de soldater, der er der.
I was military police, actively working as a police officer on the military installation. And in 1 week, I went to about 8 or 9 suicide attempts where the person either overdosed or, said that he was going to kill himself, something like that. And one for one, every single person was on psychiatric drugs.
Because of my role as a criminal investigator, I didn't witness the soldiers while they were taking psychiatric drugs. All I got to see was after the suicide or after the death, and then the reports come out. We'd get called pretty often to investigate. We would have an autopsy performed and would include a toxicological exam, which would determine any drugs in the system, and usually there was some type of drug. A lot of them were taking some sort of medication for depression or anxiety. There were a lot of suicides happening in the military, overseas in theater and back in the States.
Fra 2009 til 2012 døde flere amerikanske soldater af selvmord end af trafikulykker, hjertesygdomme, kræft og mord. USA's forsvarsminister kaldte det en epidemi. Så jo, der er et problem. Nogle hævder, at det er på grund af stress fra krigen, men 85% af dem, der begik selvmord i militæret, havde aldrig været i kamp. Og 52% af dem var aldrig udstationeret. Samtidig bliver der aldrig sat spørgsmålstegn ved militærpsykiaternes kompetence. Og det resulterer i selvmordsforsøg som det her.
My son joined the Army. He wanted to make a career and become something. He was still sweet and more normal when he came back from Iraq, even though he had, nervousness in crowds and PTSD. He was not different in personality as far as, to that degree like what we saw later on the drugs.
And so when Michael said, hey, I'm having anxiety issues, I said, you need to go tell them. Well, and that's what really began his journey. That was the worst step, in my opinion, that we could have ever done. It started off with 1 drug and went to 2. With each successive symptom that he got a new drug.
And we noticed that he started to go down in personality. It wasn't our son anymore. It was, anger, slurred speech.
It was surreal because the person I was talking to wasn't even my son. He was unsure of himself. He didn't have any will to do anything. At one point, he had stopped brushing his teeth, drinking water, eating, because he didn't care. He didn't even know that he was that way.
And I researched and discovered that our soldiers were being medicated and that they were committing suicide from it. So I printed all my research out and I handed it to my husband. And I said to my husband, tell me what you think of all this research. And he came back to me and said, if my calculations are correct, there's a pattern here that matches our son's behavior. And if my calculations are correct, he's just about ready to commit suicide. I was in the dollar store and he called me and said, I don't want to upset you, but I want you to know Michael's okay, but he tried to kill himself. And he put 2 IVs in his arms and he bled out in the bathtub and he was drawing in his blood on the walls. He didn't even know he was committing suicide.
So his cognizance, his reason, was already usurped by these pills. They take away who you are. And he wasn't the same.
We had the hospital check him and they found at least 9 drugs in his system. And they're just the ones they tested for.
They were giving my son drugs that had black box warnings. Said, if you're under 25 and you're taking this pill, your risk of suicide is going up 50%. Risk of suicide. But they were still giving the pills.
What he went through was so horrific it's hard for him to talk about. But he allows us to speak because he wants to save his comrades. He wants to save others who are going through the same thing, who are being drugged with lethal cocktails.
Me speaking as Michael, knowing the things that he has said to others, he would say, stay away from the pills. It's a dead end.
Psykiatere påstår, at deres psykofarmaka redder liv, men de taler sjældent om den alvorlige selvmordsrisiko. Hvorfor ikke? Fordi disse advarselsmarkader for de 18-24-årige, det er aldersgruppen for næsten halvdelen af alle udstationerede soldater. Og alligevel er brugen af psykofarmaka i USA's militær gået op med 76% siden 2001. Det inkluderer antidepressiva, som psykiaterne giver til soldaterne for at forhindre selvmord.
There's no evidence that drugging stops suicide. The reason I'm saying this is because it is alleged that if somebody is suicidal, you should medicate them. Except there's no evidence that medicating somebody who's suicidal is going to prevent suicide. There's substantial evidence that many drugs actually promote suicide.
And last year, within the DoD, there were 349 suicides among military personnel. That's almost one a day, literally one a day.
Det er flere selvmord end alle dem, der blev dræbt i kamp. Og militæret er meget bekymret.
In fact, in 2009, Fort Campbell, Kentucky was actually closed down by the base commander for a time because they were having just an inordinate number of suicides.
Suicides on Fort Campbell have to stop now.
The last I heard, the VA was getting close to 450 calls a day to their suicide hotline, which they set up years ago to handle the amount of veterans that have suicidal thoughts on a daily basis. 450 calls a day.
Det er et problem, der har givet genlyd i regeringsbygningerne.
One of the biggest concerns I have about the military is the inordinate number of suicides that have taken place among active duty and those who've left the military.
3 years ago, I got Congress to hold hearings to examine the relationship between suicide and increased use of medications, and there was a direct parallel. The amount of suicides were increasing proportionate to the amount of medications being introduced.
So, do antidepressants cause suicide? Of course they do.
So, don't blame the soldiers. Don't blame the military as a whole. Blame the corruption of the military by the psychiatric industry that is peddling false, dangerous medicine, that is peddling a kind of modern-day quackery, calling it treatment, but delivering suicide.
Og selvom det er slemt under aktiv tjeneste, så står det værre til med veteranerne. 22 af dem slår sig selv ihjel hver dag. En hvert 65. 20. minut. Men tænker psykiaterne nogensinde på at stoppe medicineringen? Nej. I stedet er det et nådesløst angreb.
I was a very highly functioning non-commissioned officer. I was a platoon sergeant at the time. I was kind of always being groomed for that next rank. I was getting sent to the right schools, had the support of my chain of command. Things were going really good. After I witnessed this traumatic event on my last deployment in Iraq, that's when the medications really started coming. I mean, full force. And like I said before, before I knew it, I was on 9 to 12 different kind of medications. And when I was going through the separation process in the Army, I had to get some physicals and evaluations from outside people. These professionals would see my records come up on the screen and the amount of medications that I was put on throughout my time in the Army, but especially the last couple of years. and they would literally gasp. And they were shocked at the amount of drugs, the high doses of these drugs. It was like a 6-page rap sheet.
Med alle de måder, psykofarmaka kan påvirke din krop, hvordan modvirker psykiaterne så bivirkningerne fra det, de har givet dig? De tager dig ikke af medicinen. De vil enten forøge dosen, hvilket kan give dig flere bivirkninger, eller de kan tilføje endnu en medicin, som vil give dig flere. Og en til, og en til.
It was clear right away that they really had no idea what anything that they were giving me was really going to do. They said, this drug may not work. You may need a different one. This one may need a higher dose. This one may need a lower dose.
There was friends of mine that I saw had 2, 3, 4 pills that they had to take daily.
You find soldiers that are on dozens of medications. And when I say, 7 to 9 drugs at one point, I'd say that was very average. I've heard as high as 14.
I know of some troops personally who were given up to 20 different drugs.
It's kind of depressing if you look at the number of medications that I've been on. It's very thick. It makes up a large portion of my medical file with the Veterans Administration.
And a lot of people were on not only psychiatric drugs, but drugs for their injuries. And the combination made them different. They weren't the same people.
They're mixing amphetamines with painkillers and antidepressants and sleeping pills. I mean, even to the unlearned, that sounds insane.
Denne praksis er så almindelig, at de endda har et navn for det. Polyfarmaci. Og her er noget, som mange ikke ved. Mange af disse præparater er aldrig blevet afprøvet i kombination. Hvilket gør dem, som tager medicinen, til forsøgskaniner.
The danger escalates with every increase in dose and every increase in the number of medications.
I have watched my clients who have been prescribed psychotropic drugs, sometimes a cocktail, often a cocktail, sometimes a single drug, and they are grievously changed.
If they were experiencing an adverse effect, how would they know which drug it was? Was it the antipsychotic? Who knows? Was it the antidepressant? Was it a combination? These guys don't know. All they know is they're supposed to take these because their doctor said they'll be better. And in fact, they only got worse.
And the problem is that there's no attention to the detail of what happens to these troops that are placed on them. There's no follow-up. They're simply placed on them, given a great big huge supply of them, and they're sent out to fight.
Faktisk er der amerikanske soldater, der som rutine bliver givet 180 dages forsyning af psykofarmaka, når de tager ud til fronten. Ingen kontrol, ingen begrænsning. De tager dem bare, når de har lyst.
And what happens to it when they go into combat? Are they sharing with their friends? Sure they are. That's why I've been told by social workers, corpsmen, medics, that 90% of the troops in combat have at one time or other taken some type of psychiatric medication.
It's just a grand, crazy, insane pharmaceutical roulette that's being conducted at the expense of our nation's sons and daughters, really.
My husband never did drugs, nothing, never did anything. And I dated him 5 years before I married him. And he never did anything like that. And then when he was in Afghanistan, the psychiatrist over there started giving him the medications for depression and, of course, the pain that he was in because he had been hit. And the first time he got hit, they just started drugging him up. And the second time he was hit is when they sent him home to me. And 2 weeks after him being home, the violence was so incredible. I told him that we needed counseling or we just needed to get a divorce because I couldn't live in the abuse that I had just gone through because my husband never treated me that way. Needless to say, at that point, I didn't realize that these drugs were affecting him. At one point in time, my husband was on 21 drugs, 21 at one time. I mean, and it was craziness. This is not, I don't even know who this person is that I lived with. I've tried to get him help right from the beginning with the drugs, and they're refusing him any help. They just keep continuing to give him the drugs, and he's not getting any treatment. His physical needs are not being met, and he's continuing to deteriorate on a daily basis. The whites of his eyes are now yellow. They have a yellow tint to them. His skin color is green and gray. And this happens often. And we do have the fear that we will wake up in the morning and he's going to die. Every day we live that every day. His daughter lives that every day. I live that every day. Is today the day that he's going to die? Is today the day I'm going to get the call? They need to give me my husband's life back, is what they need to do. They need to take him off the drugs so that he can think. He can't think. He doesn't know.
Det forfærdelige er, at når man er på medicinen, er det et helvede at komme af det. Nogle af dem kan du blive afhængig af på 2 uger.
Now we have soldiers coming back from the battlefield, and they're addicted to psychotropic medications, and they have a detox reaction back in civilian life, and they begin to exhibit the side effects for which they were being pre-medicated. So they become depressed, they become suicidal.
Not only is it dangerous to be on these drugs, it's also very dangerous to come off of them. In fact, in many cases, the suicides happen immediately after someone stops taking an antidepressant drug. So if you do that, make sure you do it in a way where you have medical supervision and you have a support system in place so you can get off of those drugs safely.
At prøve at komme af psykofarmaka selv, især med en kold tyrker, er meget farligt, på grund af de frygtelige virkninger, man kan komme ud for.
I have an anxiety, I'm perspiring, I just don't know what to do.
Psykiatere siger, at det er den psykiske sygdom, der kommer tilbage, og at du skal begynde på din medicin igen. Det er ikke sandt. Det er bare abstinenser, fuldstændig lige som med gadestoffer.
The doctor did not tell me if I did come straight off of these that there would be a worse effect. I didn't know that. So when I did come off it, I fell harder.
These are actually addictive drugs, and I didn't know how to act without them.
The withdrawal process is rough. And one of the things that I experienced is all these emotions, all these feelings, all these trauma, all this sadness that wasn't being dealt with, wasn't being cared for. It was just being medicated. When I got off all those drugs, it was like a floodgate.
Even though you come off those pills, there's a period of time, for I think a long, long time, that stuff is coming out of your system. And sometimes you think that life would be better if you were dead.
Det er chokerende, hvor mange soldater, der vender hjem og er afhængige af psykofarmaka. En af hærens undersøgelser fandt, at så mange som 35% af soldaterne i overgangsenheder har problemer med receptpligtig medicin. Og ofte er afhængigheden ikke midlertidig, men for livstid. Men det kan blive endnu værre end det. For nogle gange kan disse præparater blive dødbringende og slår til hurtigt, uden varsel.
Gunnery Sergeant Chris Bacchus survived the assault on Baghdad, a deployment to Afghanistan, and a second tour in Iraq.
What specifically killed your brother?
He died because he mixed narcotic drugs. Whenever he had an issue with them, they would increase either the dosage or the potency of the individual pill.
A bomb couldn't kill this Marine, but a bottle did.
Chris Bacchus havde 2 antidepressiva, 2 opiater og antiangstmidlet Ativan i kroppen. Der blev fundet 27 forskellige recepter på stedet. De fleste af dem udskrevet for nylig. Obduktionen sagde, at dødsårsagen var kombinationen af medicamenter, noget som enhver læge, der er sin titel værdig, kunne have forudset. Tilfældet Chris Bacchus viste sig ikke at være anderledes end hundreder af andre. Kun 700 kilometer derfra fejrede Stan og Shirley White hjemkomsten af deres søn, den 23-årige marinekorporal Andrew White fra kampzonen. De vidste ikke, hvad der ville ske, da han prøvede at få hjælp fra et veteranhospital. Han fik kun en diagnose og blev dernæst medicineret.
Andrew's behavior really started to deteriorate. We saw more and more withdrawal. We saw anger issues. At one point, he slept for 2 or 3 days at a time.
The psychiatrist, their solution to his deteriorating condition was to increase his medications or to change the medications.
Den 12. februar 2008 døde korporal White, mens han sov. Han bevægede sig ikke engang. Han døde bare.
The coroner's report said it was a intoxication of these drugs. Did not mention, but his heart stopped beating.
Andrew being 23, being very healthy, not having any major issues. You shouldn't die in bed.
Han var en af 4 veteraner, der kun var i 20'erne, som blev fundet døde i deres senge i West Virginia inden for nogle få måneder. Der skulle en stædig undersøgelse til fra en neurolog for at finde ud af, hvorfor.
I tried to understand how they could have died, what the mode, the mechanism of death could have been. And these dead in an undisturbed bed were cardiac. Suddenly the heart stops for some reason.
Ved at følge hvert spor fandt han ud af, at de alle havde fået diagnosen PTSD, og de tog alle sammen den samme stærke cocktail af psykofarmaka.
Came across literature on the antipsychotics, and they said that the antipsychotics have a particular danger. They can stop the heart suddenly. And here these veterans, all 3 were on a combination of drugs which can cause or lead to sudden cardiac death. Might this not be the tip of an iceberg? Might there be others? And to make a long story short, that list grew to 250, 300, and today it is 351 probable cardiac deaths. The risk of sudden cardiac death makes those drugs truly unfit for human consumption, and yet they're being used like jelly beans in the military.
Yeah, we're watching me here, Devil Dog.
En anden hjertestopstød var den 21-årige korporal Chad Oligschläger.
Are you getting that? It's machine gun fire. We don't know where it's coming from. But no worries. We have our sandbag structures. Carry on.
Chad was hilarious. You know, super smart. Super smart.
He was a lot of fun. You know, he played sports, you know, all of that. Like any normal kid was, outdoors all the time.
He was willing to make friends and talk to everybody. So that's kind of, you know, what caught my eye in the beginning as well. So he was just fun to be around.
This Native American has no comment.
Well, he told me the reason why he wanted to join the military was that if he went, then maybe his children wouldn't have to go.
He really felt like it was his duty as a citizen to participate.
When he came back, we realized he was different. He had asked his commander that, you know, he wanted to seek counseling. He needed some help because he was having problems dealing with what he had done over there and what he saw on that first tour.
All right, the reason I'm down here and not up there is because as soon as the IED went off, we were talking about a possible trigger man. We don't know where they are because we never know where they are.
Just all kind of saw like, okay, they're going to give you some medication. You're going to, you know, see a psychiatrist for a little bit, talk it out. Things will get better. We were so naive.
When he was on the drugs, he seemed like he was just doped up, all the time. He was disoriented.
It literally turned him into a walking zombie. I mean, after he would take that, and and he was real adamant about making sure he took his medication on time.
It just felt like the medication made him forget what he was doing, made him forget some things that had happened in the past. We'd be talking about stories and he wouldn't believe what I was telling him.
And he'd take Seroquel and then 10 minutes later be going back to his pill bottle and say, well, I got to take my medication. And it's like, you just took it.
He wasn't in control, I felt like, in the end. He just really didn't know what he was doing. He wasn't going to work when he was supposed to. He said he would just sleep in his room.
We're going to pause for a second due to malfunctions and technical difficulties.
I got the knock on the door at 11 o'clock at night. But when I heard the knock on the door, I knew what it was.
They had found Chad. And my thought was, okay, great. Where is he? Where's his little shit? I hadn't heard from him. And he said that he was at the barracks. I said, okay, is something wrong? Can I go see him? And he said that they found him in his room, that he was dead on the floor. They didn't know how long he'd been there, that he was already gone, and I couldn't see him. I couldn't even get on base. All I could think of was that he was alone in that room by himself, that he was supposed to be safe.
It was harder for us because we always expected, if he's in the military, he's in the Marines, we kind of expected that if he were to die, he was going to die when he was out on deployment. He was going to die, killed in action, something. We didn't expect him to come home and die.
I had a doctor at Texas A&M University read the autopsy and then said that the levels of the meds in there were not excessive. They were in line with what was prescribed.
Nothing was out of range of dosage, but they looked at it and they said, how come he's taking, 7 of them? It's a lot. And the doctor looked right at me and said, they killed him.
I blame the psychiatrists and I blame the doctors for prescribing those pills. Those are the ones that never checked up on him and let him walk out with all the other pills. Didn't take any of the pills away, just kept giving him more pills. And they're the ones.
Good morning, and hoorah.
Psykiatere kalder disse dødsfald for hændelige overdoser. Men lad os sætte i øjnene, dette grænser til uagtsomt manddrab. Og mens vores soldater bukker under, en efter en, til ordinerede dødelige cocktails, må man spørge, om psykiaterne overhovedet er interesseret i at kende årsagen. Det er slemt nok, at soldaterne dør. Men medicinen påvirker mange flere end bare offeret. Det kan også påvirke livet for deres nærmeste.
I was with the 101st Airborne Division. I was assigned to them doing gun truck and convoy security, Operation Iraqi Freedom. Came out as a captain. I've got a total of 26 months in combat. When I came out, returned home from Operation Iraqi Freedom, anyone that marked that they had seen combat or had seen someone killed or had participated in combat operations directly, it was mandatory that you went to mental health. I myself was prescribed Prozac, Depakote, and at one time Zoloft. One night, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. One night I had laid down and I'd taken my pills, and I took a shot of Jack Daniels. At that time I had my children staying with me, so I didn't get drunk or anything like that, didn't drink overly heavy, and for some reason I decided to sleep on the couch this time. And I can remember opening my eyes and not being able to move my arms and my legs, and literally feeling like I was choking to death. And my son, who was 13 at the time, He came in, obviously I was making some noises, and he shook me so hard that I fell off of the couch. And that kind of woke me up. But literally I felt like I was dying. And I can't help to think if my son wasn't there to wake me up, would I have been a statistic? Maybe.
En soldat på psykofarmaka, både i aktiv tjeneste og som veteran, kan påvirke sin familie negativt.
What we're seeing is that now this label of being broken and disordered is not only being utilized with our troops, but it's now also extended with their families.
You hear stories about these young children that are living with a deployed mommy or a daddy who just can't handle the deployments. So what happens is these troops that were deployed come home. Whether or not they saw combat doesn't matter. They're still being forced to take a subjective questionnaire, psychiatric questionnaire, and based off of the results are getting told to do these drugs. And when they take the drugs, they become somebody that's different than what that child remembered them to be. Now that child has to deal with coping in a way that is very different than what they had to deal with when the parent was initially home. That child can't handle it. So what happens? Mom and dad says the child needs to go see somebody for help. The child goes seeks help. The child gets the same drugs that mommy and daddy's on.
Instead of dealing with the problem the right way, it's a lot easier to give a kid a pill, which ultimately destroys that young mind and ultimately erases somebody from society when that child commits suicide.
My youngest son, Daniel, was a very funny, a little prankster with lots of friends in the neighborhood. He was loved by his teachers at school.
We would go out fishing or hunting or just playing around out in the woods. So we were able to spend quite a bit of time together whenever I wasn't gone on training or deployment for the Army.
Daniel began having trouble sleeping very shortly after he left, and he was worried that his dad wouldn't come home. He was worried that his dad was going to get killed. And we saw the psychiatrist for 10 or 15 minutes, and he prescribed something to help him sleep, and also Celexa.
Well, when she started telling me about the medications, I was very concerned. Overall, it seemed to me that, the situation was continuing to progress and he was just getting worse.
My husband came home from Iraq 3 months early because of my concerns.
I was very concerned at the personality change to becoming much more withdrawn and sad and depressed.
He was having some bizarre behavior. He began cutting himself at school, and he began having hallucinations.
Well, he never had any of those behaviors before being put on the drugs.
We were all here at the house. He was out of our sight for 10 or 15 minutes, and he had snuck in and went and he'd gone into his room, and I sent James to go find Daniel to help me in the yard, and he did.
What was your emergency?
We need an ambulance.
What's going on?
My little brother hung himself.
Okay, what's his name?
Daniel Radens. My mom is performing CPR right now.
Okay, let me transfer you. Don't leave.
He was an innocent little boy who was just worried about his dad, who prayed every night that his dad would be safe, and that his dad would come home, and that angels would protect him. But there wasn't anybody to protect my son. Psychiatry in the military took our youngest son from us and ruined our family.
Børn er en stor målgruppe for psykiatrien. 1,9 millioner børn har en forælder i militæret, og 1 million af dem har haft en udstationeret forælder. Og når du er barn og er bekymret om mor eller far, så er du fredløs.
The numbers of children who have been put on drugs within the military TRICARE system is astounding. You know, it's just exploding. So it has an effect, a ripple effect on the entire family unit.
Now, today, we're finding out outpatient psychiatric treatment for children of deployed active duty service members has reached an all-time high at 2 million visits. How many drugs are these children being forced to take now?
Uanset hvad det er, så er det mange. Ifølge en undersøgelse i et tidsskrift for børne- og ungdomspsykiatri, går 91% af alle børn hjem med psykofarmaka, når de har været på besøg hos en psykiater. Er det virkelig, hvad vi ønsker for vores børn? Man kan undre sig over, hvorfor psykiatere fortsætter med at skade folk. Medicinerer dem, gør dem afhængige, skaber vold og forårsager selvmord. Det er de mest skammelige grunde, der ligger bag. Psykiatere siger, at forstyrrelser som PTSD ikke kan kureres. I stedet hævder de, at de skal kontrolleres med psykofarmaka resten af livet. Det er dårlig lægevidenskab, men godt for bankkontoen.
Once you label somebody and you start medicating them, over the life of that person, it's going to cost the government about $1.5 million to provide these medications and treatment.
There's a lot of money to be made here. There's a lot of money to be made by the companies that are producing these drugs.
Profit is the only conceivable motive for all of these psychiatric drugs in the military.
Taxpayers are footing the bill for this travesty of medicine. These psychiatric drugs that promote suicides, you're paying for them.
Så hvorfor ordinerer psykiatere rekordstore mængder af psykofarmaka? Fordi det er meget nemmere at medicinere folk, end faktisk at hjælpe dem. Og på grund af denne eksplosion med psykiatrisk medicinering, har psykiatrien udviklet et meget nært forhold til medicinalfirmaer. De vil fortælle dig alt om det. Desværre vil du finde, næsten hvor som helst du kigger hen, finansielle interessekonflikter. Tag for eksempel Matthew Friedman, psykiater og direktør for VA's National Center for PTSD. Friedman er blevet betalt for at holde foredrag for 3 medicinalfirmaer, men han sidder også i de videnskabelige udvalg i de medicinalfirmaer, der producerer Paxil og Zoloft. Og ved du hvad? Det er tilfældigvis de 2 eneste psykofarmaka, der er godkendt af myndighederne til behandling af PTSD. Så er der Elspeth Cameron Ritchie, som indtil for nylig var toppsykiateren i den amerikanske hær. Hun lovpriste det antipsykotiske middel Seroquel for at være meget gavnlig i behandlingen af angst og kamprelateret mareridt. Seroquel er ikke kun ikke godkendt til det formål, men det er sammenkædet med pludselig hjertestopstød. Soldaterne kalder det Serokill. På gaden hedder det babyheroin. Samme år optrådte Ritchie i en webcast, der blandt andet var finansieret af Seroquels producent, hvor hun promoverede brugen af psykofarmaka på slagmarken.
Of course, I'm a psychiatrist, so I tend to think of psychiatric medications, and we treat soldiers with medications, with cognitive behavioral therapy, and other sophisticated treatments on the battlefield.
Til sidst er der psykiater og tidligere brigadegeneral Steven Xenakis. Da han var i hæren, var han fortaler for hyppig psykiatrisk screening af soldater. Jo flere, jo bedre. I dag screener hæren soldaterne op til 5 gange, inklusive en obligatorisk screening, når de vender hjem fra udstationering, og en opfølgning efter 6 måneder. Og disse screeninger er fyldt med interessekonflikter. Udviklingen af et spørgeskema, der blev anbefalet af hærens generallæge, blev finansieret af Pfizer, som fremstiller det antidepressive middel Zoloft. Et andet screeningprogram for soldater og deres familier bliver administreret af en gruppe, der får millioner af dollars fra 8 forskellige medicinalfirmaer. Men Xenakis vil have sin del af kagen. Han står til at tjene millioner som direktør for et firma, der sælger hjernescanningsudstyr, som han har planer om at bruge til at diagnostisere PTSD. I psykiatrien drejer det hele sig om penge, og helt klart ikke om at hjælpe. Uden at reformere det ineffektive system, ansatte USA's Departement for Veteraner for nylig 1.600 personer til at varetage psykisk sundhed, for at håndtere de problemer, som professionen selv forværrer.
If all we're doing when we get more mental health professionals is more of the same thing, but then it's a fool's errand.
Og for soldaten, som pligtskyldigt gik i hæren og tjente med ære, kan det opsummeres til et ord: forræderi.
One of the things I have the benefit of really is getting thousands of emails a week, whether it's from veterans or other people suffering from pharmaceutical damage. It's specifically veterans these days. We see an increase. We see people calling out and saying they feel betrayed.
They are very proud to serve, fight for their countries, protect, the people back home, their loved ones. And I think all they ask for is to come home and be treated fairly, given answers and looked after. And they're not looked after. They're told, it's all in your head, it's mental, take the tablets, it'll cure, go away, and that's it. And I think that is betrayal. For a word to use for those people is an understatement.
It's the deepest betrayal of a human being to kill them while claiming you're treating them. To call it medicine and deliver death.
Og det er helt unødvendigt. For der er håb. Og det omfatter ikke psykiatrisk behandling. Se dig omkring, og du vil desværre se en verden fyldt med psykiatri. Men der findes ufarlige, effektive og brugbare løsninger, og man kan finde dem.
The main word for soldiers, and not only soldiers, but anybody suffering from any type of so-called mental illness, is that there's hope. That there's hope out there, there's solutions out there, things are available for you to get your life back, to not have suicidal thoughts, to not end your life, and it does not include psychiatric drugs.
There is a way to solve this. It's to get rid of the drugs and start treating soldiers like human beings, not lab rats. That's the solution.
The vets who get over their war wounds do it on their own, do it with friends, do it with colleagues, do it in support groups. They're doing it separate and distinct from the medical interventions.
If you talk to lads, when they get together, they help one another, they support one another. They are aware of fellow feeling, fellow understanding. Psychiatrists, by having the opportunity to disrupt that process by using drugs, can often disrupt it rather than support it.
A soldier does need help. He needs care and love and friendship and, whatever else is going to make him feel better personally, but he does not need psychotropic drugs.
Egentlig medicinsk behandling kan begynde med en dybtgående lægeundersøgelse fra en kompetent læge, der undersøger, om der er en underliggende skade eller sygdom, der kunne være grund til en emotionel lidelse.
Every symptom should be investigated for physical origins, because if you don't do that, almost certainly someone who has a real physical symptom is being labeled as having a psychiatric symptom, which is false.
By making sure that we clear up any physical issues, we begin to make the soldier, the veteran, feel better. Once they begin to feel better, they feel better physically, they feel better emotionally, and they're able to deal with some of the issues relative to the traumas or the stress that they were under while in combat.
Hvis du er på psykofarmaka og gerne vil stoppe, så sørg for, at du gør det under opsyn af en kompetent læge.
Getting off the drugs is one of the best things that I've done, and because it's helped me out. It helped me be back being Mike Mezen, and it really saved my life.
It's transformed my life, but at the same time, it's also made me look real hard at the damage that those drugs were doing me while I was on.
And it was
that type of incident that catalyzed my resolve to aborting the system that I was in and moving forward with a non-pharmaceutical approach, which has been phenomenally successful for me. I'm not the same person.
Men der er stadig mange soldater lige nu, der er i fare for at blive beordret til at tage psykofarmaka. Det er grunden til, at det er yderst vigtigt at kende sine rettigheder.
There is an obligation for the service to take care of our sons and daughters that are sacrificing themselves and giving an oath to defend the Constitution with their life. I mean, that's a big deal. The command may say you have to go to see a psychiatrist because we believe you to be unstable. So does he have to show up for the appointment? The answer is yes. However, once you go into that therapist's office, you are not required to participate in that treatment. So on occasion, I have people that call me and ask me, can I refuse this or can I refuse that? And I say, absolutely.
Under denne ret til at nægte findes en af de vigtigste rettigheder af dem alle. Informeret samtykke. Informeret samtykke betyder, at man har ret til på forhånd at få kendskab til alle farerne og gavnen af den foreslåede psykiatriske behandling, alternative behandlinger og muligheden for ingen behandling overhovedet.
Do active duty and military have a right to informed consent? Absolutely. But these soldiers, sailors, Marines are not informed as to all of the consequences of these medications, because if you were truly informed as to the consequences of taking these drugs, would you really take them? And the answer is most likely no.
Informeret samtykke er kun en af mange rettigheder, man har ifølge USA's militærlovgivning. Mange andre lande har også love om informeret samtykke, men det er op til dig selv at forlange det. Bliv involveret og fortæl andre om disse rettigheder. Mange modige overlevere og deres familier siger nu deres mening. Og de har brug for din hjælp.
I don't want another family to experience what we've experienced. Unfortunately, that's happening.
This is an outrage. What's going on here? Are these young people just guinea pigs? Apparently so. My daughter was a guinea pig. And she's gone.
One of Tony's last things, he always told me, just keep speaking up, Mom. Even if you only help one person, just keep speaking up.
My goal is not just to tell Anthony's story, but I feel it's a story that's not unique. It's something that's happening to so many of our troops.
As an advocate for my son and an advocate for wounded veterans across the country, our group that I work with, we're trying to make a change in that direction.
So we made it our mission that we're going to tell everybody we can and have the website have as much information that we can.
We've got to get the word out to our soldiers. Don't take these drugs. Don't take these drugs. It's the beginning of the end.
Der er brug for øjeblikkelig handling, ikke bare i USA, men i hele verden. Flere engelske soldater og veteraner begik selvmord i 2012 end antallet af soldater, der faldt i kamp. Det samme gælder det australske militær i de forløbne 10 år. 20% af dødsfaldene blandt de tyske tropper i udlandet er selvmord. Og det russiske militær har en selvmordsfrekvens, der er 65% højere end resten af landet.
So, what is the solution? Get rid of psychiatry and mental health. Don't leave them in charge.
Mental health will not improve until psychiatrists are no longer in charge of it.
I truly believe that they are destroying our military.
The battlefield is safer than psychiatry. Do you understand that? Statistically, you are less likely to be shot by an enemy than to be killed by a pharmaceutical drug. That's the truth about psychiatry.
Og alligevel når psykiatrien meget længere end til militæret. Det er præcis som J.R. Rees planlagde det. Psykiatrisk behandling, afprøvet og fremmet gennem militæret, infiltrerer alle afkroge af det civile liv. Psykiatrien er en international industri, der indtjener $330 milliarder om året. De lovede hjælp. De giver smerte, skade og død. Den skjulte fjende er blevet afsløret. Hvad der sker nu, er op til os alle sammen. Du har fået kendsgerningerne. Gør modstand.